Fuels management means managing the vegetation on the landscape to reduce the risk and the severity of wildfires.
Fuels management is all about changing outcomes. So we alter the fuels to ensure that when the fire happens, either people, places, or things are not impacted negatively.
Over time, in many areas of the West, fire suppression has led to this unnatural buildup of fuels where wildfire hasn't been able to play its natural role in managing those fuels. And as those fuels build up, when wildfires do happen, they can be more intense and more severe, impacting the soils and the vegetation, so it's more difficult for vegetation to recover post-fire.
In fuels management, we understand that fire will happen. We can be fantastic at putting out 97% of the fires, but when that fire occurs, a fuels treatment will reduce that negative outcome to either the people or the landscapes that we love. Fuels management uses a number of different tools, such as mastication, timber sales, herbicide, grazing, all these different tools in our toolbox.
A landscape with higher fuels accumulations might need mechanical entries prior to a prescribed burn. Some systems within the BLM we can't do any prescribed burning, so they're mechanical treatments only. If a flatter area was available and you could use machinery, we would look at things like masticator to break up that smaller diameter fuel, up to a filler butcher that to be used on timber harvest.
Really, the big picture is making a resilient landscape that's healthy, something that's going to come back from a disturbance, whether it be drought, fire, insect, whatever it might be. It will respond naturally. With increased fire suppression, we've taken the natural disturbance regime out. That's not been able to play its role for over 100, 150 years. And so we have a buildup of fuels, we have a change in fuels, we have a change in vegetation, it's changing our soils, we're losing our soils.
You can see there's hardly any perennial grasses. They've been outcompeted. Here's a channel that's starting to cut here from no vegetation, which can cause a lot of problems.
Through these treatments, and you can see a lot of that between what's behind me with all those thick, tight trees, and then as we move across this road, you can see the results of the treatments that we've done.
The Bureau of Land Management and the state of Utah have teamed up, done a lot of work, mechanical work on private land and on the public land side to restore these landscapes back to more of a natural state and reduce the community fire threat.
One of the benefits of the Fields Projects for Cultural Resources is getting the inventories done. So we survey tens of thousands of acres a year, and that just gives us a ton of information, find all these sites, and we just get a better understanding of the history in the area. Once we know what the site is and what's at the site and what the impacts to the sites are, we'll determine if treatment's beneficial. So really the main goal of that is to stabilize the soils, get the vegetation down within the site boundary, and that keeps artifacts from shifting, keeps impacts happening to features within the site.
We talk about these fuels projects, I really think about watershed health, of keeping the soil in place and then providing for plant communities that are going to be resilient, not just to fire, but to grazing, to wildlife, for everything.
I think the interesting thing about fuels management is the economics of it. The amount we spend on actively mitigating ahead of this risk that we know is out there is really small compared to what we spend on both suppressing but also rehabilitating these landscapes.
We're on site here on the Deer Springs fire. This fire burned in early July of 2024. So the fire burned 80% of it in one 12-hour operational shift through thick pinyon and juniper. With this fire, we did emergency stabilization and rehabilitation. Although this covered more acres than typically what we do in a fuels treatment, this is significantly more expensive.
We started this project, the South Canyon project, in 2010. Historically, it was a sagebrush site. Before we treated it, it was 100% covered with trees. For this portion of South Canyon, we have 2 to 3 entries, mastication and seeding, and then we had as well some lop and scatter. You could not see through this stand of ponderosa because of the pinyon and juniper.
From a risk management standpoint, you know, and from a fire suppression standpoint, when you look at the fuels and how it's just, there's no canopy over there now. There's places where you can safely engage, where you can use aircraft, and all the while the habitat's being improved.
They're fantastic fuel breaks. They provide opportunities, places to manage fire and to bring fire back to our landscape.
The treatments that these guys have done have been a big game changer for us in many, many ways. I was selling 400 and 450 pound calves, and now I'm selling 550 pound calves. And with today's market, that's a pretty good increase. I would go to bat for projects like this anywhere. Number 1 for fuels, and number 2 for water, number 3 for grazing and wildlife. And they've done it all.
The fuels program should be one of the biggest priorities the BLM has, is land management. It's a trickle-down effect. I mean, yes, that's healthy rangelands, but then it's wildlife, and then me personally, ranching. Our sustainable ranching business is now sustainable because of these efforts.
If you get inside those particular areas that have not been treated, you just don't find productive landscape with the plants, but the animals, the insects, the birds, capacity for the land to be able to retain the water. There's been a culture developed here, and I think that's why it's been so successful, is because we're in it together.
I think the key here is that we have officials with the Bureau of Land Management, the U.S. Forest Service, state and local governments, and then also the private landowners who are all willing to participate in these projects. And that's key. Local elected officials are super supportive of anything that's going on out here. They've been always on board.
For our fuels program, we consult with over 23 tribal nations. We oftentimes work with them very closely to develop treatments in different areas and to ensure that we're able to incorporate any traditional knowledge or anything that they'd like to see.
We do a lot of acres here. We've done a lot of landscape scale type treatments and acres. We couldn't do probably a quarter of what we're doing today without that partnership with the Utah Watershed Restoration Initiative. It's the sportsmen's groups, it's the special interest groups, it's the agencies, it's the other state agencies that all come together and actually make all these projects better, having everybody have a part of a piece of the pie, making it their project, because really it's all one project. I think that's the key.
When you all have a common goal and a common vision, great things can happen.